Yeah. Okay. All right, and then we'll start recording. Yeah.
So I stand up here.
Yeah, that's great. Are we good?
Mm-hmm.
Good morning. We're so glad you all are with us, and we've got some folks here at the office and some on webinar, which is great. I will tell you to start off with that the wall that we use to project is right by the front door. So for those of you watching from home, if someone comes in late, you might see somebody come in the door. We're just going to ignore that. So we only have one good wall to put that on. So, but that should just be at the beginning. We're so pleased to have Carolyn Wheeler with us today from Human Development Institute, and she's going to talk with us about the ABLE Act and also some ways to plan for the future for our kids, estate planning, financial planning. She's an expert on this. She's actually helped my husband and I with our planning for Emily and our other kids. So really pleased to have you here with us, Carolyn. And Carolyn is going to stand on the other side of the room to face the PowerPoint. So you all at home will just see the PowerPoint here in just a second. So
Yeah, great. So actually, it would be really wonderful if you can unmute people and you all can introduce yourselves so we all can know who's here, so to speak. So we could just have that and let maybe one at a time and then just tell them who it is that now can talk.
Hang on just a minute. No, I think we can do that. Okay.
Since there's not a whole lot of folks.
Actually, Carolyn?
We can't?
No.
Okay.
I'm sure we can, but we've never done that before,
All right, well, that's
so
okay.
I can't
All
figure
right.
it out what's too much further.
No, I'm sorry. We'll just know that we also have, I guess two other families here in the room with us, and then some folks that are helping volunteer. So again, thanks for sharing your Saturday morning, and I'm actually going to stand over here now. If you just want to take it to full screen. Actually, I think I may sit, just be informal. So when Tracy asked me to do this, this was actually a while ago, and really everyone that I know of that's interested in this is on somewhat of a learning curve about the ABLE Act. There's still a lot to know, a lot to understand, a lot still to figure out. But in my working with families over the years, I just also wanted to talk about the ABLE Act, though, in the context of overall financial planning. Like, it's a piece of it, but it's not all that I would encourage families to be thinking about. So that's why I've talked about this as being kind of pathways to financial freedom. So I'm going to start, maybe, by giving this framework and of what I call a financial house. And that the foundation, really, as you can see, is that all of us, I really need to aspire to have some kind of an emergency fund. In other words, I'm trying to help families understand that if you haven't done these things at the bottom, putting money into an ABLE account is probably probably shouldn't be your first priority, if that makes sense. In other words, there's other things we need to do to protect our families. I'm going to talk a little bit more later about some estate planning, but none of us knows when our day might come that we're no longer on this earth. So it's really just important to have a will, to have things in place so that we protect those that we love, we protect our family members. The foundation really are protection products that are life insurance. And again, that's for now and also for the future, because life insurance is pennies on the dollar. It provides income tax-free benefits to your family, and you can your money leverages a lot more money. You know, when we talk about the ABLE account, what you put in there, yes, it can be invested, but there's no guarantee, what's going to be there. And the ABLE account is not an estate planning tool. An ABLE account is not what you want to think of or think about in terms of you're going to leave something to an ABLE account to provide for your family member in the future. It's not the vehicle to do that any more than my retirement plan is. I have a retirement plan. It can't be the beneficiary of my life insurance policy. An ABLE account cannot be the beneficiary of a life insurance policy. It's a savings tool for your family member, but it's not an estate planning tool. And really, I put ABLE account and retirement strategies and saving for college kind of there on the first level, and then some of the other things. Actually, I feel like the auto insurance and homeowners insurance probably ought to be further down on the foundation part, because as we know, if something happens to our home or something happens to our car, that's a very significant event in our lives. And so that's just, again, to me, something real important to pay attention to in terms of making sure that we've protected our families and those assets that are so important to us. So with that in mind, I've got on for us, the left-hand side of the screen, but really when we think about show me the money, that as you think about the ABLE account, it's just, again, to me, important to have priorities around making sure you have an emergency fund, you lose your job, something happens, or you just need tires on your car, that we could hopefully avoid adding more debt to pay down debt, and then having sufficient life insurance if one or both parents die, but also to understand the role that life insurance could play in terms of funding what's called a third-party supplemental needs trust when you die. It's really just the most cost-effective way to do that, because again, there's certain kinds of life insurance that really work well for that. It's typically a policy on both parents' lives. That's actually what the Brewers have, that's going to fund a supplemental needs trust for Emily. And I don't think they'll be going anyplace anytime soon, but they've got that in place and have had for some time. And then disability income insurance, it's probably something many of us have through our work, hopefully, but we could become disabled, and if you become disabled, you don't have income, or you have less income. And so just making sure you've got that in place, and then having certain legal documents that are in place. And then just reminding you about, or all of us, about our future. We can't borrow for our retirement. There are oftentimes, I've met families that are going to save a whole bunch for college, but sometimes at the cost of their own future. So again, it's just kind of keeping things in balance. You all are all really, really young. I'm not, but I've actually planned for my own long-term care expenses, because the reality is that I'm not yet 65, but I'm in the window. And as my friends are aging towards 65, the data is that if 4 of us who are 65, there's at least one of us who'll live to be 100. That's pretty compelling. And if you live to be 100, chances are you may or live sometime in that part, you might have long-term care needs, at least in my own life. That's been true for my mother, my father, my husband, and my grandmother. And we've inordinate, just huge sums of money. Fortunately, they had money. My husband had a terminal illness. We had long-term care insurance, really helped us to care for him at home. My mother had long-term care insurance, really glad she did. So that's just part of retirement planning, because it can really erode that. And then this idea of really preparing all of your children for adult roles and responsibilities, which I really believe can include work, because it's actually where I think the money for your family member for the ABLE account, working is in large part perhaps where that money's going to come from for them to be able to use to save for the future, as well as hopefully, other family members that would like to contribute to that. So again, it's context. I also want you to understand that the ABLE Act is not available today. You can't go open an ABLE Act account. I'll give you an idea in a few minutes when I think you will be able to do that, but it doesn't mean you can't be saving now. If you've done all those other things, and it's like, well, I've got an extra $100 a month, or I've got or my child gets $100 for a birthday present, or whatever, there really are ways that you can be saving in your own name and social security number for your child. You could open a mutual fund account, and it's in your own name and social security number, but you're saving and that money can be invested. Now, there's no tax advantage. Whatever growth there is, you may pay taxes on it, but it's still a way to save. You could have a savings account. Your estate plan for any of those needs to provide for some mechanism for that trust to be the beneficiary of that money were you to die. And then actually, if your family member, you really believe post-secondary education is realistic, you think might be a technical school, could be a culinary, vocational school, 529 plans actually are excluded as resources for purposes of Medicaid, because you own it. You would open that, Tracy, if you were going to do that for Emily. Emily doesn't own it, or grandparents. So 529 plans are an option. And then something I think families could also think about that is tax advantaged, assuming that one member of a couple is employed, you could open and you've taken care of the other things and you've got some excess money that you'd like to set aside, you could open a Roth IRA. Are you all familiar with Roth IRAs? A little bit? Well, Roth is the name of, I believe, the senator or the congressman who established this back in the late 90s. It's really a way to encourage people to save for retirement, because the money that grows in a Roth IRA, again, grows tax-free, which is the benefit of an ABLE account when we get there. So if you invest money in a Roth, now somebody has to be working, and what I have up there, which I don't, if this applies to you, you probably don't care about a Roth IRA. AGI stands for adjusted gross income. And so if you're in your family, you're making between $183,000 to $193,000 for married couples, you probably just have got lots of things in place and are doing really well. Although people who do financial planning say, you know, the more money you make, the more money you spend, and so who knows. But I mean, people who make lots and lots more money that are not eligible for a Roth. But for single people, including you, or maybe to be married soon, but a Roth IRA is just awesome. So you could open a Roth IRA. You have to find a company that would let you do it. Sometimes companies require, you got to put $1,000 in it to open it. Or might be a little bit more, or some will allow you to open it as long as you make monthly contributions. I opened one of these for my daughter when she was about 19, and she's still I say only, I'm really bugging her now to put in more, but she's putting in $50 a month. So so it's invested, but whatever growth there is, there's no taxes on it when she goes to take it out. Now that's kind of sweet. That's unlike your company-sponsored retirement plan. If you've got a 401k at your company that you're putting money in and hopefully they're matching. I work at the University of Kentucky. We have a phenomenal retirement plan. I put in 5% of my income. The university matches 10. I mean, that's incredible of my salary. And then it's invested through TIAA-CREF. But whatever is in there and the growth, when I start to take that out, I will pay taxes on all of it, because the money came out pre-taxed. Does that make sense? I haven't paid any taxes. That's a gift from the IRS to me to encourage us to save for retirement. I'm getting ready to open a Roth, even at my ancient age, but I am going to open a Roth because I've got about $100 a month now I want to save toward my retirement, and I think I found a company that will let me do that. I think I may have to put $1,000 in to get it started. But see, I'm over 50. I bet you couldn't have guessed that, but I am. Now, I don't have $6,500 in there, but if somehow I got a windfall, that'd be a great thing for me to do with it. So see, so you could be doing that now. And then if you have depending on how old or young your child is, by the time they reach a certain age, you might have a pretty significant amount of money in there. And you can actually withdraw your contributions for no tax penalty. So just know there's some tools out there now. If you have some money that you'd like to start putting aside for your child, you don't need to wait. That's all. I just want people to know they don't need to wait, that there could be some things you could use now. So the reason why the ABLE Act has come into being, and actually we have always had another vehicle I'll talk about in a minute that you could use as well, there's just no tax advantage to it, is that people with disabilities who receive Medicaid, and if your family member receives the Michelle P. waiver, and I'm assuming that's true for the woman that I help, but at some point your child may receive Medicaid either through eligibility for a waiver or through eligibility for something called SSI, Supplemental Security Income, at age 18. Those are both means-tested programs, and so really you have to be pretty limited in what your assets are. You can only have $2,000, and that word that's in red is countable. You can only have $2,000 of resources at the first of the month, and if there's a couple who both are on SSI or Medicaid, they can only have $3,000. Now the word countable is important because people can't have anything. So for example, I help a woman with an intellectual disability. She doesn't have Down syndrome, but has had an intellectual disability since birth. We're actually about the same. She's a year older than I, but her parents are gone. Parents are deceased, and actually her parents would have not been able to help her anyway. They were pretty limited themselves. So my friend Linda lives in Louisville. I'm actually going to see her later today. So Linda has her own apartment, so she has stuff. I mean, she has furniture. She has a nice big screen TV. She has, a microwave. It's not like she can't have anything. And she doesn't need any medical devices or adaptive equipment, but if she did, let's say she had a power wheelchair, that doesn't count. Or if she even had an accessible van. I met with a young woman last week who now has spina bifida, and she's working at Georgetown College where she has an accessible van. And she's on SSI and Medicaid, so that doesn't count. She can have the van. Certain kinds of life insurance, people could actually own a home in which they live, and then there's certain ways you can set up burial accounts. I've done that for my friend Linda. I understand you all have young children, but Linda is, I did this a few years ago, but so I've set it up in such a way that the money in that fund will grow, but it doesn't count against her in terms of her eligibility for Medicaid. And then property essential to self-support, that's for people who own their own businesses. So if your family member had their own business, whatever the business owns doesn't count as a resource. And then these are the two things I want to talk more about today. Able account funds and then funds held by a special needs trust. Those are both structured in such a way that there can be money, or with a special needs trust, not an able account, but special needs trust can hold a home. So I've worked with a number of families where actually they bought a home or condo, usually it's a condo, for their family member. They have adult children now. They're not obviously they're adult children, let me be really clear. So these are adults. Their parents have been able to buy a condo usually, or a patio home, and they're leaving that to it's called a supplemental needs trust when they pass. And actually one family, I'm on the advisory committee for a special needs trust. Both parents are deceased. That's what they did. She lives in Frankfurt. Actually, she lives in Frankfurt in this beautiful home, actually, that her parents, bought, left it to the trust. She receives services through a Medicaid waiver program, and there's also other money in the trust that helps, when you need a new roof or a hot water heater. So just understand that there are vehicles out there to help you both save for the future now, but also to plan for the future when you're not here, okay? The special needs trust has been in existence before the ABLE account. And then PASS relates to a work incentive, and I won't go into that now. So let's get on to the ABLE account. So ABLE stands for Achieving a Better Life Experience, and it's named after a young man, Stephen Beck Jr., who actually was part of the an advocate for the passage of the ABLE Act, and died evidently, I think, shortly before.
He did. He had a daughter with Down syndrome.
Down syndrome, yeah.
He advocated for years for this, and right before it was signed into law, it was very unexpected.
He passed away. So it's named after him, which I think is awesome. So it was signed, not singed. I just saw the typo there.
They signed it into
They signed it into law on December 19th. See, if I did a spell check, that wouldn't have come up, because that's a word.
That's right.
So it's a form of a 529 account. So I need to make sure you have some framework for that. 529 accounts have been in existence since the late 90s. To enable families to save for post-secondary education for their family members. And 529 is the section in the IRS, Internal Revenue Service Code, that created it. And what it allowed, the 529 plans, we still have them. Kentucky has one. It's called the Kentucky Education Savings Plan Trust, I believe. Mutual fund companies will open them. It gives you a way to save for post-secondary education, again, tax-free. Just like the Roth IRA, 529 plans, you put money in there, and then when your son or daughter goes to college, or maybe goes to Sullivan, or whatever they do, funds from that account go to pay tuition, can go to pay for books, can go to pay for computers, and as long as it's used for what's called a qualified distribution, which that is, there's no taxes on the gain. Do you understand? Because it's important it's important to understand, from my perspective, and what the ABLE Act is going to say really this money ideally should be used for. So the ABLE Act created a new section in the IRS code, 529A. It's in the same body, so to speak, or compartment of the IRS. Now there is great information at the National ARC office, and that's what I've given you all a copy of today, and that's what Tracy sent to everyone to download. So I just highly recommend that you do that. I think there were two. One's a short form and then one's a long form. So the short form, if you just want to read the first, you can do the front and back. And then the National Down Syndrome Society was also very, very active. And we're going to give you a link at the end of this where one of the women who was very instrumental in the passage of the act or involved in advocacy, I think she works for, she works for NDSS or she's a parent. In any event, is going to be doing another webinar about the ABLE Act, I think next week. I think she works there. So basically what it created was a mechanism for families to save, or people themselves with disabilities, really, in my mind, it's really, to me, it's more for your family member to use as a way to save for their future, that's tax advantaged. In other words, money in the ABLE account can grow tax-free as long as when it's taken out, it's for what's called a qualified distribution. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute as I understand that. And money in the ABLE account doesn't count as a resource. So I'll use Emily as an example. I know Emily receives the Michelle P. waiver. So assuming you will open an ABLE account for Emily and you put money in there, and it exceeds the $2,000 limit at some point, that won't count or won't exclude her from still being eligible for Medicaid. Okay? That's wonderful. It's tax advantage and also allows people to maintain their benefits.
Which has really been the big issue, because when you go for Medicaid, you know, if the person that's been deemed disabled has more than $2,000, you're out. You can't, so you can say, but it can't be in their name, and then that gets a little iffy, like, you know, the whole get hit by a bus type thing.
Well, and again, that's where you'd have to make sure you've done your estate plan.
Right.
But, I mean, if you're going to set something up in your own name and social security number, you have to have made sure that you've done something to protect that if you get hit by a bus.
Yeah, that the ABLE Act then helps with that, because it can actually be in her name.
Yeah, that can be in her name. But I also want you to know, she can still have both, Tracy. Your family member can still have both, and I would suggest you want both. You do want both, in my opinion, because, well, for one thing, I'm not convinced, a savings account, from my perspective, you can use it for anything you want to. I'm going to show you where I don't think that's going to be true with the ABLE account. The ABLE account talks about qualified disability expenses and distributions. But in any event, so don't think you can't have a savings account. It's just that you can't have more than $2,000 in that account on the first day of the month. So for my friend Linda, she has more than $2,000 that cycles through her bank account every month. Because my friend Linda has worked. She receives a very substantial benefit off her own work record from Social Security, just like any of us who work could if we became disabled, and then she still works part-time. So at this point, I just spend it down on fun stuff. So, but I've kind of contrasted the two things. So the ABLE Act provides eligible individuals with disabilities, and talk a bit about, that would include your family members, but there are going to be a whole lot of folks with disabilities it will not include, because the disability has to have occurred before the age of 26. So if you've experienced an acquired brain injury from a car accident at 35, you can't use the ABLE account. Okay, so it has to be, it's kind of the compromise that Congress made in order to pass this. So eligible individuals with disabilities, the same types of tax advantage saving tools that all other Americans have through those college savings accounts. I talked about 529s, health savings accounts, and individual retirement accounts. And there is a limit as to how much money you could have in an ABLE account and still qualify for something called SSI, which is a supplemental security income. The total amount of money that somebody could have would be whatever the 529 limit is for the state for Medicaid. I'm not sure where I put Medicaid. In order to maintain your eligibility for Medicaid, I'm sorry. In other words, my friend Linda, if I were to open an ABLE account for her, I don't really care about this because she's not on SSI. But I do care about maintaining her eligibility for Medicaid. I think the 529 limit for the state is well over $200,000. But there may be a reason why you might not want to save that much, and I'll tell you about that in a minute. Now, right now today, we honestly do not know who will be available to open ABLE accounts and how you're going to get the money out. I mean, it's just not known. It's just not known. In other words, like, do you have to do you complete a form? Do you just make a request? I mean, we don't know yet. We do know, though, today that, at least with savings accounts, if you have one, you can just go get the money, right? I mean, when the bank's open, or you have a debit card. So that's just something why I think you want both, is that I don't think the ABLE account is going to work in the same ways. There's going to have to be some mechanism that may not be immediate accessibility in terms of how you'll get your money back out. Just like with a 529 plan. If you had a 529 plan and you need to pay your tuition at Eastern, you don't just have a checking account. I don't think you could write it out of. You'd have to call the company, they're going to send you the money, or they're going to send the money to Eastern. Does that make sense? I think that's a bit how the ABLE account's going to work. There's going to be some mechanism. Same with the retirement account. When I retire, I can't just, there's a process, okay? There's a process to get to my money, let's put it that way. Whereas with a savings account, bank's open, or you've got a debit card. So that's still to be determined. Okay, so I'm going to contrast, again, kind of the Section 529 of the College Savings Plan and then the 529A, the ABLE account. Again, both are tax advantage ways for people to save. 529 is to save for a child's post-secondary education. Able account, tax advantage way for a person with a disability or family members to save, but note for the person's qualified disability expenses. And I've got a slide about what those are. They're also on the ARC sheet. So just as with a 529 plan, qualified distributions, which include both the contributions and growth, are tax-free if they're used for qualified distributions, meaning tuition, books, room and board, and computer, but not for your spring break trip to Florida. You see? Do you understand? Well, but that's an important issue to me with the ABLE account, because that's what I'm using. I'm using that to tell you what I believe is what the ABLE account's going to allow you to do. So again, the ABLE account, once you can open them, is a tax advantage way for, again, the person with disability or family members to save, but for the person's qualified disability expenses. Qualified distributions, I'll talk about in a minute what those categories are. Again, would be tax-free, but from my perspective, I'm not sure it would include fund. So think about it. Think about the parallel. My friend Linda, I've just paid out of her money, she's paid Shockey Tours, and she and a friend are going to go see the Biltmore in December. That has nothing to do with her disability. You see, I mean, they're just like the spring break in Florida. I don't see that being a qualified distribution from an ABLE account. Now, that's my opinion. That is my opinion. We'll see what happens, because that has nothing to do with her disability. So that's why, and from my perspective, depending on what it is, you know, you see your family member using the money for, that's why you may still need a savings account. Or you may still want to find ways to pay for things like with the Shockey Tour, I pay for it on a monthly basis. I just don't see that being a qualified distribution, because it doesn't have, it's not any of these things. Going to see the Biltmore isn't a medical or dental expense. It's not education. I don't think you could really say that's educational. I mean, I suppose, but
Right, pay for while you're there.
I mean, really, she's gonna go have fun. I'm just gonna go have fun. Personal support services. Now, the person who's going with her, if that person had to be paid, that could be out of the ABLE account. Financial management and administrative services, legal fees, funeral and burial expenses, employment, training, assistive technology, housing, and transportation. And she has season tickets to Derby and her Playhouse. I don't see that fitting in any of those.
You know, I want to be her friend.
Well, I'll call you, Tracy, because I'm always looking for people besides me to go places with her. But I'm just saying, and I'm telling you, this is my opinion, but I just kind of think I'm right. That the ABLE Act is awesome, but as you're putting money into it, understand if what Emily's biggest dream is, Tracy, is to go on a cruise, not educational, other than the personal support services, I think I'd save for that some other way.
And just to be clear, the ABLE Act's been passed federally, but each state.
And we're going to talk about that. Each state has to pass their own, and then we still have to figure out who's going to open them. You have to figure out where the money's coming from. Now, I'm in no way dissuading you from this. I just want you to be in your own mind and for your family member's mind, kind of clear about what you can then use the money for. Just like in the 529 plan, that's not going to pay for the spring break trip to Florida. It's going to pay your tuition, okay? You see? That's why I see this. So this would be your family member. Now, Linda has a mobile phone. It could pay for that. She doesn't have a smartphone, but she does have a mobile phone. It's actually on my family plan, but I could see it paying for that, because that really does keep her safe. You know, and actually the iPhone I think could work. An iPad, I think that could work. If you wanted your family member to be able to save toward being able to go to school somewhere, or maybe, you know, the Michelle P. waiver is 40 hours a week. If you could save money for there to be more, you know, did you see what I'm saying? You know, it can supplement whatever it is, the publicly funded services that you have. You could save toward a house. It could, you know, pay for transportation is huge, especially in other areas of the state. I mean, we at least have something here. But in other areas of the state, you know, for somebody to get to and from work, awesome. You know, it could pay, maybe you have a chauffeur, I don't know. But I think that's important for families to start to understand what I would, you know, this is the intention, is to help people to save, but then to use the money, but for what they're calling qualified disability expenses. There's nowhere in the legislation or in the federal regs that talks about it being used just for fun. And the reason that I think that is, let's think about the IRS, okay? The IRS is saying to you, Emily, you can save for your family member, but it's tax-free. A cruise, we're not going to let you save for a cruise. You see what I mean? You have to think about the fact is you've got this tax advantage. So I think they're putting some boundaries around and what you can use the money for. I just think that's what I think. Whereas with mutual funds, or if you want to, if you have a savings account, it's not tax-free. Now, with the savings account, it's practically tax-free because you aren't making any interest anyway, you see? You're really not, okay? And I'm probably the only person saying this, and I'm not trying to be a negative Nelly. I'm just trying to really help people understand that it's not the only tool that you probably want to be thinking about in terms of your family's future.
You need 2 boxes.
Well, I think you do. I mean, again, season tickets to UK football games. That's not a qualified disability expense, in my opinion. That has nothing to do with your disability. If you're a UK fan, you want to go. Mm-hmm. Now, if you need help to go, you could take money out of the ABLE account, I suppose, if you didn't have, another funding source for that. Does that make sense to you? Mm-hmm. Okay? That would be my opinion. Now, my understanding is from others who seem to think that, well, if you did take money out for season tickets to the UK football games, it's not a qualified disability expense, and the worst thing that could happen to you is if you're audited by the IRS, you're going to get dinged. My concern is at some point there could be a more significant penalty. That just would be my concern. Because, again, you're looking to maintain those means-based programs, and so I just would be thoughtful about doing that. Now, I would think, back to the fun part, if you can find an educational conference about assistive technology at Disney, you might be able to do that. You might be able to justify at least the night you spend at Disney and go to the assistive technology conference. That might be okay.
I think DSAC should do that.
So anyway, so I'm just saying, I've had a lot. This is my personal opinion, but it's my professional opinion based on my knowledge around just supplemental needs trust, and because with a supplemental needs trust, you can do whatever you want to with it, because the money in a supplemental needs trust or special needs trust doesn't grow tax-free. That's where I see the difference. Okay, if you've got a tax advantage, there are going to be some parameters in my mind as to what you can use the money for, and I think that makes sense. Okay, so ABLE accounts would supplement, not supplant, any benefits that you can get through publicly and funded programs. You need to understand your family member can only have one ABLE account. Now, grandma and grandpa, aunts and uncles, people can contribute to it. At this point in time, and I know there have been some efforts to change this, but as far as I know, it hasn't. It has to be established in the state where that person lives. Now, that's an issue for some families whose family member lives at the Stewart home in Frankfurt. I know they're kind of unhappy about that, because mom and dad may live in Washington State. But at least unless that gets changed right now, the ABLE account would have to be established in Kentucky, because that's where the person lives. And it's really Kentucky Medicaid that's paying. So I don't know if that will change or not. Right now, the federal proposed regulations are in a period of public comment, and there's actually going to be a public hearing on October 14th. We may see some changes. So I'm telling you what we know as of now. So just know that, stay tuned. How's that? Stay tuned. Stay tuned. All right, and so here's who's eligible. It's on the basis of whether or not they receive one of these benefit programs through Social Security. So a person receives what's called supplemental security income or Social Security disability insurance through the Social Security, and it occurred before the age of 22, they're automatically eligible. Now, for your family members who are not, I know one of the active parents, I think she has a 3-year-old son with Down syndrome. She'd have to look at number 2. There's going to have to be certification of that child or person's eligibility based on their disability, and there is information in the regulations, but will have to be established. Now, some companies or some organizations that think that's too onerous on the company to verify are really kind of, I think, wanting to minimize how much documentation a company would have to collect to verify that certification. Again, that's to be determined. In other words, TIAA CREF or Fidelity. You're familiar with some of these big companies, T. Rowe Price. You want to go open a 529 plan, you just need a name and a Social Security number, and they're not collecting they don't need a birth certificate of your child. It's pretty simple. Those companies are not real interested in reviewing medical records. See where we've got kind of this, understandably. So I think they're wanting more of just the family is going to certify, and they may need some proof of age. I don't know what that will look like, but so that number B is still in the works as to what that's going to look like for those people who are not receiving SSI or SSDI, and And I think there's a way probably those folks are going to either have to certify or show proof that that occurred before the age of 26. So any person can contribute to an ABLE account, but there's a limit on how much any ABLE account can receive in a calendar year. It's not it's not unlimited. So for this year, it would be $14,000. It's the annual gift tax exemption. So if that goes up to $15,000, it could be $15,000. But as I understand it, and as I read that, and I verify with people with what's called the National ABLE Resource Center, it's not like you each could put in $14,000, or that you could put in $14,000, grandma and grandpa can put in $14,000 collectively, and your child, if your child got $100 for a birthday present, okay? It's the total of $14,000, and then again the $100,000. You can save up to $100,000 before resources would be counted for purposes of what's called SSI, Supplemental Security Income. Many of your family members, your children, are not eligible for SSI at this point because of your income. At age 18, unless something changes, your income no longer counts. And so they could become eligible. That's a cash benefit. That right now is $733 a month. It's intended primarily for food and shelter. And so that's where the SSI limit comes in. But there's a higher limit for people who are just on Medicaid. Okay, so I'm sorry you can't really read this, but this is really important for you to understand. Any assets that are in the ABLE account when your family member with a disability dies is subject to Medicaid payback. So in other words, Emily again. So Emily has an ABLE account, Tracy, and let's say she still has $10,000, and so when she dies, then obviously Medicaid spent more than $10,000 on her in her lifetime. I mean, really, a whole lot more, which is, so that, I mean, that's not, as a taxpayer, I don't see that as a problem. But I think as a parent, and that's why I think you want to be thoughtful about putting money in and taking money out. That makes, like, it's not this long-term savings tool to me that you're going to see it sustaining your child when you're gone. I mean, it could be. But if you use a third-party supplemental needs trust and you leave $100,000 to it, and then and again for Emily, there's a life insurance policy that's going to put $100,000 in a third-party supplemental needs trust. If there's still $10,000 in that when Emily dies, it goes to whoever you said it went to. You see the difference? Okay, so I mean that's why you need more than one box. You need more than one way to think about planning for the future. Okay, so again, what Tracy was saying, each state then, after the federal law was passed, decides whether or not we're going to offer this. And so Kentucky, I can tell you just to give you a little update, they're working on legislation right now. So there have been a group of folks that have been meeting primarily through the leadership of Mary Lee Underwood, who's a parent of a child with a significant disability, actually, but Mary Lee is also the director of the Commonwealth Council on Developmental Disabilities, and she's pulled people together from self-advocates, the Arc of Kentucky, the UK Human Development Institute, Protection Advocacy. There are several parents, Lynn Breaker's involved, and Karen Herdina, and Ashley Barlow Mayer, I think, from Northern Kentucky, and some others. And then people who provide direct services to people through Medicaid have been involved in input conversations. And the big challenge, frankly, has been finding where will this be housed. The law requires that there be a state entity. In other words, DSAC couldn't run the ABLE program for the state. Not that you'd want to, Tracy. Okay, I'm just letting you know. People thought we might be interested in Life Plan, and I said, no, I'm on the board of the Special Needs Trust here. We said, no, this is going to be complicated. So the good news is that the Kentucky State Treasurer, Todd Hollenbach's office, has agreed to be the entity where it will be housed. Actually, you can go on the ARC's website and look at the other states. If you have insomnia sometime, you can just go and look at the other states that have passed legislation, but I think about 19 of them, it is going to be based in the State Treasurer's office, which I think is a good fit. I mean, this is about money. This really is about money. And so there are legislative sponsors, Senator Will Schroeder and Representative Mike Denham, and the Treasurer, so legislation is being drafted even as we speak. And so if you're interested in being kept up to date about that, Karen Rickey is developing a listserv, and you may already be on there, Tracy, I don't know, but you might want to write her name down. Karen is at the Council on Developmental Disabilities in Louisville. And so we're looking to create a large listserv of people, so once there is legislation, we can let people know and to advocate and encourage their representative and their state senator to, we want it passed. We want this opportunity for family members here in Kentucky, even though we don't know exactly what it's going to look like. And so Karen is compiling that. And so how will it work? Seriously, we really just, we don't know. And even the state that passed it don't know. Because as far as I know, as of, let's see what I've got on my slides. I'll come to that next. Unless something's happened in the last 2 weeks that I don't know about, there is no mutual fund company that said, can't wait. Bring them on, okay? In other words, there has to be, banks have to agree to do this. Somebody has to agree to open an ABLE account, right? And right now, that's still, I think financial institutions, huge, Fidelities, TIAA Crefts, American funds, mutual fund companies, I think are still waiting to see what the final regulations will be and what, frankly, their responsibilities will be. Because right now, the way the regulations look, if you were to be the opener of an ABLE account, there's a lot of responsibility for you around certifying people's eligibility, making sure people don't put more than $14,000 a year in an account, making sure that distributions are actually qualified. Well, most mutual fund companies, that's not what they want to do. They just want your money and they'll invest it. Okay? Seriously.
They're going to have to hire a whole.
They would, and so there's actually, I know the 529 folks have really been on this. In other words, all the states that have 529 plans, college savings plans, remember, this is 529A. They're in the same part of the IRS code. So a lot of organizations went to their state's 529 plans and say, hey, will you do this? Well, we did that in Kentucky too, and they said, no, thank you. Frankly, well, it's not part of their mission, but it's a lot bigger than what they're used to doing. So actually, collectively, the Association of 529 Plans has sent something, I know, in response to the proposed federal legislation saying, you're going to need to make this less onerous on companies. In other words, you're going to have to really put more of the responsibility, frankly, on families, meaning to certify that you're going to be the one, if you take out a non-qualified distribution, it's on you, it's between you and the IRS, it's not between us. So we'll see, what the rest of the story, as Paul Harvey would say, we'll just kind of see how that all pans out. But it's not as though in those states where they passed the ABLE Act that people can start opening ABLE accounts, that I know of. Now, North Dakota, actually, they have, I think they have a bank, a state bank, and I would think that one might be the most logical. They might be able to start figuring some of this out. But it's my hunch that nobody's going to do it until the final regulations, and I don't blame them. I don't blame them. You wouldn't want to start something and then find out. In fact, there's some states that pass their laws before the regulations. They're going to have to go back and fix stuff. So I'm glad that we in Kentucky actually hadn't passed legislation. So stay tuned is all I can say. Okay, stay tuned. But that's why I wanted you to understand there are ways to be saving now, because even if the legislation is passed during the General Assembly, and I think there's a high likelihood it will be, it doesn't mean you can open an ABLE account the next day. We're going to have to be financial institutions or banks or somebody somewhere that's going to say, come on down,
And I think that was a misconception for families.
I think so too, Tracy. Thank you.
Federal,
I do too.
Everybody was really like, oh, okay, ABLE Act, done deal, woohoo. And, we thought by now, we would have, not we, but collectively that, families would have already opened one. And we were thinking like even February of last year, if I'm remembering right. And, and just reading about this,
it's complicated. It is. Yeah. It's complicated. So I'm just saying again, if you got money, you might want to go figure out something else to do with it, But not to say this isn't a great opportunity, but it's not available right now because it's not available right now. Okay, so I don't know how well you all can see this, but I just want to compare again. From my mind, all these tools are needed. So the ABLE account, and then also understanding special or supplemental needs trusts that are actually available today. And I think I may have brought some lifetime brochures. I didn't think I could send you the brochure. Yeah. Or just also people can go to the website. And here we go. Let me just pass those around. Thank you. Okay, so again, I've kind of gone through the side here about the ABLE account. It's not available yet. Hopefully next year. I mean, I really do believe somebody somewhere will want to open these. Trust me. I think American Funds is highly likely. American Funds is a large mutual fund company. American Funds is the company that Virginia, which has the largest 529 plan in the country. I think American Funds will work with them even if they take a loss, even if it costs them money, because they're making so much money on the 529 plan, if that makes sense. I think that's a mutual fund company that's going to be in this game. That'd be my prediction. And American Funds is available throughout the country. I mean, you right now could actually open a 529 account through American Funds here in Kentucky. Is that, you following me? Just like Fidelity or any of those other companies. I think Fidelity manages mutual funds. American Funds is a mutual fund company. I think they'll do it further. Don't know what banks will do, so we'll see. We'll see. But in any event, so at all the left that I think I've already talked about, okay? And then just to kind of go across the top, if you were to have a supplemental or special needs trust, any money in that account can also be invested, but any gain is taxable. So with Life Plan of Kentucky, we are a pooled special needs trust. We have over 50 accounts right now, the majority of which are people with disabilities money. People with disabilities who are on Medicaid have too much money to qualify for Medicaid. So they open an account, they have money in their account, that money is being invested. But if there's gain, and there has been until the last few months, it's probably wiped it all out, but that gain can be taxable. So you see the difference? One's tax-free, one's not. There's a limit of how much you can put in an ABLE account. There's no limit on the amount of money that can go into a special needs trust. There just isn't. There's no age limit. So again, we have clients who encounter disability in their 30s, 40s, even 50s, who may have ended up with a personal injury lawsuit, or they ended up with an inheritance a lot of times, and so we don't have the age limit. ABLE accounts aren't going to own property. They're going to have money in them. A special needs trust account can own money, can own property, can have money, but can also own property. Pooled trusts don't tend to do that. Like the example I gave of the family in Frankfurt, they worked with an attorney actually in Louisville to set up their trust. It's not being managed by Life Plan. It has, actually Central Bank is the trustee, but it can own a home. A special needs supplemental a supplemental needs trust is what parents would do. It can be the beneficiary of a life insurance policy, and it can pay for fun. So we have clients with Life Plan that really their money comes out. I don't know. We have a little boy that called Karen Purge, the estate planning training, who runs it, and said, "I want to speak to the money lady." Okay, he's 8. So Karen gets on the phone. Yes. Are you the money lady? Yes. I'd like some video games. Okay. I mean, that's not a problem. Now, you don't send the money to the little boy. The little boy can't really just get the money and then go buy the video games. I'm thinking we may have ordered them for him through Amazon and they got delivered to his house. But see, that's just not an issue. Does that make sense? The money in his account can pay for fun.
And it doesn't count, and we just went through all this a year ago for the second time, because we did it the first time and we realized that it wasn't all that we needed, so we went through it again last year, and with 5 kids and Emily's needs and all that, it's an exhausting process, but very necessary. But the way I understand it the best, and just break it down to very simple terms, is if it's in a supplemental needs trust, it doesn't count towards the resources because Emily does not control that
That's
trust.
exactly right.
It's for Emily, doesn't count as her resources because she's not in charge of it. So
That's exactly
to get that
right.
money, she has to go through a trustee to say, I want some video games. She can't just go buy them, so it doesn't count as her assets.
That's exactly right. You said exactly right. You said and that's exactly right.
Okay.
It doesn't belong to her.
For me, I had to break that down. Like, if this is her money, why doesn't it count? But it's because she's not in charge.
And she doesn't have direct access. I often use the example, Tracy, when I was 16, I drove my mother's 1969 Plymouth Sport Fury convertible.
Wow.
I thought I was pretty tough stuff. Okay. Now that car was referred to as my car. Whose car was it really?
Your mom.
It was Mama's. Okay. So it was for my benefit, but I didn't own it. I think I did help pay insurance because I was babysitting. But you see, so that's the analogy. You're exactly right. It's for your child's benefit. The supplemental needs trust is.
Right.
And so, but they don't have direct access to it. With an ABLE account, your child will. That is a huge difference. They will have direct access to it. which in some cases you may think maybe that's not a good idea depending on your child.
But again, as we work towards independence and things, that's a
It
great,
is a
to
great
have them in
thing.
2 boxes,
And
so that,
that's
you know,
exactly right.
he could go to the bank, he could take money out of his account. I mean, you know, when all my kids were like 12, that was their birthday present, paper for them. We went and opened a savings account for them, you know.
Exactly.
So, you know, that would be great. Right now, Emily doesn't have a savings account, she has a checking account, but, you know, so that would be a great thing for him to be independent enough to go into a bank and say,
Well,
"I
and
want
to
that
understand
money."
there is provision for your
Work
family
services.
members that really, like my friend Linda does not have the ability to walk into a bank and set up a checking account. I mean, she doesn't.
No.
And that's probably true of your family members,
Mm-hmm.
okay? So the ABLE account will allow for you as parents to do that, even if they were adults. So I did want to make that clarification. But you do have PFITs, and I can think of some, who do have the capability. You know, they're, well, this young woman I met who has spina bifida, she can wheel herself into a bank and open an ABLE account. You know, she has the cognitive ability to do that. So I did want to clarify that, that, you know, people can have, somebody else can essentially be the person that sets it up for them. So if you can think of a trust as just a box with a heart, that's the image I use. It's a legal entity that can hold things for a person that you love, but it can also receive things upon your death, okay? And so it can be inside your will. You've got a living box. You've already got the box made, Tracy. You know, your box is made, so to speak. It has language in it that says that it doesn't count as a resource, the things that you were just saying. It supplements, not supplants, government benefits. The issue is you just have to figure out how there's going to be money in there, typically when you pass. And so, again, this is often here on the left what government sources pay for, and then on the right what a special needs trust that can be funded by family members of the person with disability can pay for. Because you kind of contrast typically what the government money is paying for, and then what a supplemental or special needs trust can pay for. And see, the ABLE Act, I mean, yes, it can pay for this, it can pay for this. I don't see it paying for that. I don't see it paying for that. It can pay for that. I don't see it paying for that.
Will you say those out loud for the people on the webinar that can't see you? Just
Oh,
full
okay.
screen.
Sorry. That's right. Okay, so again, if you look at the side that says special needs trust, an ABLE account could certainly pay for medical dental care not covered by insurance. That would be I could see that being a qualified disability expense. You know, I could see that. Don't see recreation being a qualified disability expense. Technology, awesome. You know, so again, think about it. If you've got an ABLE account, you just want to think about, so what money, where does you pull the money from? You've got an ABLE account, I'd pull the money from there for the things like the medical care, the dental care, the technology. If you need additional services and supports, I'd pull that from the ABLE account. If you're going to pay for transportation so my family member can go to work. It does say transportation, so maybe you could use it for transportation to go to the UK football game. I don't know, I'll be honest. I know you could use it to go to a dental appointment. You could use it for medical appointments. You could use it for employment. I don't know. Personal hygiene, grooming costs. I don't see that coming out of an ABLE account. Where I think that's different, I know of a young woman, I just know of a lot of myself. How about I just use myself? A few things that I do in my life where I have somebody do my nails, and it's pretty expensive. You know, so if I needed a special needs trust account, I would hope, and actually I know of another woman that's true of her supplemental needs trust. I mean, her nails are like $30 a shot, you know, and it's a couple times a month, and I don't know, that may come out of her trust account. She gets massages, that comes out of her trust account, you know. So just understand you need more than one box. How's that? And so again, first party special needs trust, that's really the person with the disability's money. This is kind of the counterpart to the ABLE account in a way. So folks that, with Life Plan, the majority of folks are people with disabilities that somehow have ended up with more than $2,000 in resources. And so someone, either they or someone on their behalf, has established an account with Life Plan. They could also have worked with an estate planning attorney to petition the district court, but that's expensive and it takes a long time. With a pool trust, you can open an account with Life Plan between $100 and $500. So we've really needed one. And in many ways, we've needed it for people with disabilities who have excess resources. Because $20,000 is a lot of money, but I can tell you that there's no bank that's going to be a trustee for $20,000. None. I mean, Chase actually stopped doing trustee services for special needs trusts. Chase doesn't want anything less than $5 million. No, I'm just telling you. I'm just saying that the entities that you hide, right, not a problem, right? All right, not a problem. So we really are meeting, and we actually have, again, it's just chunk change, right? Right, Philip, it's not a problem. So we have people who have, accounts of maybe 5,000 to a bunch of money because they got some kind of a personal injury settlement. But we also have families that have opened up what's called a third-party account with us. It's empty, but they've got a life insurance policy, or a portion of their estate's going to flow into that account when they die. So and it really is helpful to those families that don't have people, like you've got 4 other children. You've got lots of trustees, Tracy, or at least some.
Yeah.
You
do. And any of them would be fine, but then I have to start worrying about who they marry, and does that
Right.
person get, will that person have control on?
And so there's lots to think about. So life plan kind of takes that. Life plan can be the trustee, or you could have in your document that you could. I guess too complicated.
Yeah.
And then this is what you would want. For first party trust. So again, there could be a payback provision, depending on what the Medicaid expenses were. And this is the difference again between a first party special needs trust account and an ABLE account. The money is invested, but the growth is not tax free. People may have to pay some taxes on the growth in their account, which I don't think is the end of the world, but it is a difference. It's a difference between the ABLE account where the money can go tax free, but you can't spend it on anything you want either. And then what I would hope you all would do if you haven't, this is what, it's really a third-party supplemental needs trust. I should change that language, because my friend Karen Kurtz reminds me of that frequently.
Karen Birch is a state attorney specializing in
special needs trust, and she actually runs Life Plan for us for free. She's a sibling. She's a wonderful, wonderful person. She's here in Lexington. In any event, a third-party supplemental needs trust is something that you all would set up. And you would figure out a way typically to put money through life insurance or some portion of your estate. But life insurance is what I would advocate for, because it's pennies on the dollar and it's guaranteed. If you have a $100,000 policy, you're going to have $100,000 versus things that are more driven by the market. And then again, back to the example, if there's $10,000 left in Emily's third-party supplemental needs trust, when Emily dies, then Keith and Tracy have decided where that money goes. Okay, probably. Either it could go to DSAC. I mean, seriously, you could decide it could go to
and in all honesty, part of it is.
Right. So it could go to a nonprofit. It could go to your other children. So you get to decide, because at least as of right now, Medicaid doesn't have a claim against that remainder. So again, just kind of show me the money between first party, third party. Whose money is it? First party, just like the ABLE account. Well, it's viewed as the person's money. In other words, if you as a family member put money in if you put money in your son's ABLE account, it's viewed by Medicaid as his money, okay? When you put money into a third-party supplemental needs trust, Medicaid doesn't view it as his money, okay? That's why there's no Medicaid payback. So you want to be thoughtful, in my mind, about where your money goes, okay, about where your money goes. You may really think about it more from the first party and the ABLE account, or really for your family members' money, but my money, I'm probably going to want to put somewhere else, most of it, because I don't want the Medicaid payback. I mean, again, could depend on your circumstances.
And that's the estate recovery, is that what you mean?
That's what estate recovery is, or Medicaid payback or estate recovery. Because it's what you said, it's not Emily's money. It's for her benefit, but she can't get to it. And really, it was your money, Tracy. It's going to be, or the life, whatever it is that funds it, it's really never been hers. With a first party account, this is the person's money. The first party account is the person's money. An ABLE account, it could be the person's money, it could be grandma and grandpa's money, it could be your money, but it's still going to be viewed for purposes of, from Medicaid's point of view, as the person's money, because they do have direct access to it. Okay, you see, follow the logic, I guess. Okay, so again, there are just some advantages to pool trust. There are several. Life Plan is one. We're based here in Lexington, but there are other special needs trusts if you want to explore it. And I don't think I have it. These are just some advantages to pool trust. And again, I talked a little bit about my friend Linda, but just to encourage you all to think about work as hopefully part of your family member's life at some point. So, Linda doesn't earn more than $1,090 a month, so she maintains what's called an SSDI benefit, and it's really quite substantial. These are some of the things that she does with her money right now, as well as pay rent. She has her own apartment in a building that was built by an organization called Wings with Wings through HUD funding. There are 8 folks with a degree of intellectual disabilities, each have their own apartments. It's right off Pikes Lane in Louisville. And so then she does work a couple of part-time jobs. And so anyway, I just want to just kind of put that in there in terms of work being a good thing.
And
So
DSAC is starting that career initiative planning, so we're moving towards the goal is everybody needs to work.
well, it's transformational for people. I mean, Linda has more friendships. She just has, well, she's just kind of grew up in that culture, but there just are other people in her life and just the sense of self-worth and just her income. She wouldn't have the income she has today. SSI is $733 a month right now. That's the most anybody on SSI would ever have. Linda's worked long enough that she now doesn't get SSI. She benefit off her own work record. It is substantially more than $733 a month. I just said, if she's got $2,000 running through her bank account every month, that gives you an idea. Okay, and she has 2 part-time jobs. It's mostly through her disability benefits. And that's her employment specialist right there. And we were having a planning meeting on Valentine's Day, so that's why the heart plates. So what, I need to send you the link, Tracy. I won't go through the rest of the slides. We've actually made a video about employment, and it includes 2 people with Down syndrome in it. So
It's not the ATSI one.
It's the Customized Employment in Kentucky one.
I think I have that.
And you may have that. It's on YouTube right now.
Actually, I think we put it on our Facebook.
You may find your Facebook page, yeah. So it doesn't just feature 2. That wasn't on purpose. It just kind of worked out that way.
It did.
Just kind of worked out that way.
Great. It's a great video.
Yeah, it's a good video. And the young woman, Ellen, who says, I love my job, we couldn't get her to talk. So that's the only reason why she doesn't have a more speaking part in the video. She's very shy. What questions do you all have here? I don't know if people can type in questions.
They can. If you hit escape.
Let's
There we
see.
go.
Well, let's see if I can read them. You know, Special Olympics, I'm not sure. Honestly, I don't know. I really don't know how that would be viewed for Special Olympics. It would, how about I don't know? That's a really good question. That, I'm hoping, and I have not had the time to try to say I'd like to respond to the federal regulations, but you might want to take, you could probably go to the NDSS's website and see if you can download the proposed federal regulations. I could probably send them to you, Tracy, if people want to read them. There's a place to make public comments, so you could ask some of those questions. I mean, I don't know.
Okay. And then,
Special Olympics might be, that is a disability-related activity. I would tend to think the answer would be yes, even though it's fun, but I honestly don't know. That's a really good question. I've tried to explain the differences between a special needs trust and an ABLE account. So,
The person's CLS goals include social development, why would sports?
well, I think, participating in sports might be, going to a UK football game, not so much. If there's a cost, there's a cost for someone, there was a young man with Down syndrome recently that was featured. I think he's a water boy, and he got to play football. And if somebody was really playing football, somebody's playing football, playing soccer, and there are expenses related to that, that might very well be a disability. But actually, I contradict myself. Anybody who plays soccer needs certain equipment, whether you have a disability or not. Anybody who plays football needs certain equipment, whether you have a disability or not. It would seem to me it would be any specialized equipment you would need to be able to participate that might be covered. That's how I would look at it. That would just be my guess.
oh, that's yet to be worked out.
I think all that's yet to be worked out, but that's kind of in my mind how I would think about it. Because if you play football, you got to have all that stuff. The school usually provides it. If there's something special you need in addition, then that might be able to take that out of an ABLE account. I would think though, I would look toward the ABLE account to be something to help your family member, maybe to save toward being able to be more independent in terms of where they live. I mean, can you put money away so that when they get to be 25 or 30 and you're like, I'd kind of like them to have their own place, you know, well, you've got money. There would be money there possibly to help with the security deposit or to buy furniture or to help them get set up in their own place. You know, that would just be a thought. Might even be to buy their own vehicle, depending on their capabilities. And I don't, yeah, we'll have to wait to see for the specific regulations, to see what it is that they're gonna, you know, kind of say is, if they, right now the proposed regulations, frankly, don't give any more detail than what's in that sheet of paper that I've handed out to all of you all. It doesn't give any more detail related to what qualified disability expenses will be, except these broad categories. So that would be something that I think would be helpful, if they would give additional guidance about what that's going to look like.
I think that's been really helpful to understand that you still need both.
That's been my fear. I've just heard people say, well, why do I need a special needs trust?
Yeah.
Well, you need one for when you need it for your money. How's that? You need it for your money when you're no longer here. In my opinion. That's my opinion. Because that's not, the ABLE account, again, is not an estate planning tool. It cannot be the beneficiary of a life insurance policy, or it can't be the beneficiary of a portion of your estate. It can't own a home. I know of at least 10 families that have converted a portion of their home, and their family member lives there, and they'd like their family member to continue to live there. Well, you can't leave that house to an ABLE account, okay? That house is going to have to go into you could leave it to another family member, or you could leave it to a third-party supplemental needs trust. So, and then I also just think people need you know, something at a bank that people can access easily and immediately as well. So there is a webinar, if you want to put the link up, that the NADSS is going to be having, I think, next week. On the ABLE account. And so you can see what Ms. Sachs says. She may contradict everything I've said. I'm kind of, again, sharing with you what my opinion is. Some of it is my knowledge. I mean, I do know that ABLE accounts are going to be subject to Medicaid estate recovery. That's not going to change. I just think the whole issue of qualified expenses is still one that, you know, there does need to be greater clarification about in my mind.
Can you just speak quickly about Medicaid estate recovery? Just
well,
for those that may not know.
So what that is that if it's the person's money and it's in a first party account or it's in an ABLE account, if Medicaid has spent money on your family member, which is highly likely, either through a Michelle P. waiver, that's Medicaid funded, or if your family member qualifies for SSI and has Medicaid for health insurance. Medicaid has spent money. Medicaid is publicly funded. All of us, anyone who pays taxes is funding Medicaid, okay? It's publicly funded. So in order for people to have these resources set aside and excluded during their lifetime and not count, in other words, people who have accounts with Life Plan, a first party account, and they've got more than $2,000 in that account, Medicaid is saying right now, we're going to exclude that during your lifetime. So you can still remain eligible for Medicaid. You can still have the Michelle P. waiver. You can still have whatever other waiver you have or your SSI. But if there's still money in that account when you die, you know, we may have spent millions on you. That's not likely. So if you've got $5,000 for the taxpayer, you know, it's really from the taxpayer's perspective. That's going to go back into the Medicaid pool. And see, in the state of Kentucky, for us to have any money for Medicaid waivers, we have to have a 30% match. In other words, the money that supports the Michelle P. waiver, 30% of that money comes from Kentucky taxpayers. So it's going back in to help other people. Okay, it really is. It's going to go back in to help other people who may be in nursing homes. I mean, any of the Medicaid-funded long-term care through nursing homes, through waivers, or the state match. So that's what it's a state recovery. It's after that person dies.
So if Emily passed away and she had $10,000
in an ABLE account,
it would go back to the
well, because Medicaid spent more than $10,000 on it, right?
Mm-hmm.
But in the third-party supplemental needs trust, if there's $10,000 there, no, because that was never Emily's. An ABLE account, it's Emily's money. Third-party supplemental needs trust, it's not.
So when you think about giving your loved one a house, even though if it's their primary residence, it doesn't count as a resource.
If it's in the third-party supplemental needs trust.
Right. And also, then when that person passes away,
Your trust says what
Your
happens to
trust
it.
says what happens to the house, not the state.
Which is why families have bought the house and not put it in their family member's name, because then there would be Medicaid estate recovery.
Right.
That's why they buy the house and it goes into the third-party supplemental needs trust when they die.
So just for our purposes, and I hate to keep talking, but that's all I know is what we do is, the house is in the trust. I'm not know if I'm saying this right. The house is in the trust, Emily's trust, and third-party supplemental trust. And then we put a caveat in there that says Emily can choose to live in the house, or if Emily one day, what we envision is not what always happens. So I envision, okay, so one of my kids is going to move into the house and take care of Emily forever, and it's going to be okay. Well, what if my kids who are now older, and I see this happening, are married and have their own house?
Which
And they may not want to move their children and their house to move in.
Put the PowerPoint back up.
So in that case, Emily can say, or I want to go live in an apartment. I want to live in like her friend Linda lives. So the trust can sell the house and use it for Emily's benefit. She doesn't have to stay in that house, but it's part of the trust. Am I saying that right?
Yeah.
Sounded good.
And I don't know if you put the house in the trust yet or if it goes when you die.
When I die.
That's what I thought. It's not gonna, you don't want it to go in now, because
No,
you can't do anything with it.
No,
You want it to go in, you would
Right.
you would want it to go at your death.
Right.
So here's again just another slide that kind of compares the two. And I'm just also gonna go back to just, this is about all we know right now about qualified disability expenses. I mean, that's what it says in the legislation and in the proposed regulations. So that's what it says. Now, there is, it is about helping people to be more independent, to have a positive quality of life, all those things. And again, and it may be that if people decide that they're going to use money for something that's not that, out of an ABLE account, that nothing's going to happen to you unless you get audited by the IRS. I mean, because in other words, if you've taken something that the IRS determines is not a qualified expense, then they're going to say you or your family member actually owes taxes. You see, that's one, at the moment, that's probably the only potential fallout that I can think of, that I know of, that could happen. The other possibility, though, is if the current regulations, I think, stipulate that whoever runs these programs has to agree that it's a qualified disability expense. If that continues to be the case, you could have whoever runs it decide it's just all on you. Or they could be in a position to say, no, that is or isn't. I can say with Life Plan, we do say it is or isn't. We do review people's requests. And we do that somewhat to be also a fiduciary. I mean, if somebody wants to buy, we've had people want to buy cars, but, if they wanted to Ferrari, we'd probably say no. But want to buy something that's reasonable. So I think that's still all up in the air too. Like kind of who gets to decide how the money comes out. And if it's just the family member or the person, then the onus is on them, I guess, to justify to the IRS if they were ever audited as to whether it is or isn't. And that would also require the person or the family member to keep all the receipts. So if you take money out, you're going to spend it on whatever, you're going to have to show documentation for what that was for. So that's different from a savings account. I mean, right now, the savings account, you get the money, go wherever you want to with it. So just know that it will be a bit more complicated. And I would agree, it does sound similar to HSAs. I would agree. But what we don't know is, it does sound very similar.
And even for, if you have guardianship, because we're getting ready to go through this with Emily, when she turns 18 in December. But so when you have guardianship and she gets SSI, we have to turn in receipts every year to show.
For guardianship, you do.
Right. So it could be something similar but we just don't know. For the ABLE Act, you might have to turn in receipts
And
show what you
I think the
spent.
thing that's going to be challenging, the HSAs, if you have a health savings accounts or HSAs, I had one and I had this nifty debit card. And I can tell you that I don't have one anymore, but when I did, if I had taken that HSA card and gone to Costco and tried to buy food with my HSA card, it wouldn't let me do that. I think it will be figuring out, this is a lot, but HSAs, again, it's kind of a narrow window of what you can use it for. Prescriptions, doctor bills, this is a whole lot bigger than that, So you're gonna have to have a company that's gonna be willing to figure that out. So when is it okay to use the card for? When is it housing? When is it employment? You see? So and if they're gonna do that, folks, I mean, I keep hearing people say, well, we want all this to be free. Well, well, I mean, some company has to be able to fund people to figure this out, okay? You know, you can't, I want this to be free. I don't want any costs. Well, good luck. I think good luck with that. I mean, somebody somewhere has to be paid. Would you agree to do this? I just think there's a lot that remains to be seen as to how it's going to actually work for folks. Hopefully, it's going to work in a way that can be reasonably, won't be costly, and folks can be accessible. I'm glad it's not on my back. It's not for me to figure out. I'm glad I'm not going to be figuring that out. That's why I said Life Plan is not interested. We're too little.
It's a lot to take in. Are there any questions? Or I know Carolyn is always really good about answering questions, and feel like if we have some
or telling you I don't know, and who might, and who won't.
That is an answer, because So do any of our webinar folks, do you all have any other questions? Or I don't want to cut anybody off early.
And I would agree with Tanya. I would agree with you. You do have to pay it back in an HSA account. I just am not quite sure how this would work. But it might be similar. I know there's a lot of hope from folks that it will work a lot like an HSA account. But I also want people to have the opportunity to invest, because HSA accounts, typically your money's not earning anything. I mean, it's just, it's just there, and it's great. But I want those families who have 3-year-olds, if they want to dump in, there are people, not me, but if you could dump in 14 grand a year, I'd like that to be working for your child. If you had a 3-year-old and you could dump in 14 grand a year, and when they're 25, hopefully you have, a good amount of money, or when they're even 20, so not have to pay taxes on it. So I'm hoping people you can have both. You could have the opportunity for the tax advantage gain, but then also have accessibility.
Well, I think that's what I personally have learned, is that you need both. That one is not going to cover everything.
And I just don't know how the able life will work if it can give both. Right. How's that? I don't know. I hope so.
Well, thank you, Carolyn.
You're welcome.
She's always a wealth of knowledge, and she explains it so much better than I do. I'm more your creative person. Carolyn's more like your black and white and all that. So we really do appreciate it, and we're going to post this on our website next week. So if you feel like you missed part of it, I know a couple of people were saying they couldn't hear very well. That you could go on our website and it's all recorded, and hopefully we fill in those gaps for you. So, and if you have any questions, you can always email me, and I'll probably email Carolyn.
Or somebody, or Karen.
or Karen, or somebody that I know. But we really appreciate you coming and talking to us, Carolyn. Carolyn's a great advocate for us and for a lot of people. Big heart. So we really appreciate it. And thank you all for taking your Saturday morning. I know this was very helpful for me, and I know it was for you all too. So I'm going to give my plug for getting your walk team started. Our walk is about, it's the end of October, so I'm not black and white. You all can do the math. It's about 6 weeks away. But this is how we fund things like the webinar and some of the activities come up. So it's going to be a whole lot of fun, and I hope you all get your team started. And then we've got a new parents' night dinner coming up Friday, and so lots of exciting things on the calendar that you can check. So appreciate you being with us, and Carolyn, thanks again.
Oh, thank you all. It was fun.
Right.
Now you all understand the cinnamon rolls, the donuts.
Yeah, that's right.